The man whom a very popular character of Amir Khan was inspired from in the movie Three Idiots has been instrumental in changing the face of education in the mountain region. In 1988, he founded SECMOL, the Students' Educational and Cultural Movement of Ladakh, that aims to bring reforms in the government school system in Ladakh. In 94, he was instrumental in the launch of Operation New Hope, a collaboration of the government, village communities, and the civil society to bring reforms to government school systems. As an engineer, he has been teaching innovation at the SECMOL Alternative School, where together with the students he has designed and built, check this out, solar-powered heating buildings that are low cost, they're made of just earth and mud, and they maintain 15 degrees Celsius, even though outside is minus 15. The genius himself, ladies and gentlemen, could we please welcome on stage the very amazing Sonam Wangchuk.
Namaste, Delhi. I bring you greetings from the mountains of Ladakh, where I come. Happy to see so many young faces. Takes me right back to the time when I decided to choose some paths in my life and decided to work in the field of education while I was still doing my engineering. The reason why, while doing mechanical engineering, I decided to work with education reform and helping young people engage themselves not just with books and examinations, but with solving real-life problems in their own context of the people, was an accident, actually. I was going to do my engineering, and I had developed a liking for optics, light, lenses, mirrors, and so on, which I was told I would find in mechanical engineering. But I had a difference with my father, who thought I should do civil engineering because that's what has more scope in the mountains and not mechanical. The difference grew so that he said, if you do what you do, you'll do it on your own. So I was there to fend for myself, finance my education, and I decided to do that by teaching students back in Ladakh. And while teaching, I learned a lot about the education system, and it changed my life forever. I saw that in my region, Ladakh, because the people are a minority that speak a different language, live a different life, which is not reflected in any of the textbooks. The language is different, the examples, the content is all irrelevant to the mountains. So 95% of the students used to fail there, and I felt moved by that. How can 95% fail? And yet we blame these products rather than the system. In any system, if 95% fail, it's the system that should be evaluated, right? So this experience of having to teach changed my life, and I decided that in life, it should not be about what I need, but more about what needs me. I loved my lenses and mirrors, but I thought these students need me more. And rather than adding another engineer to the long queues, I decided I would rather bring reforms in the education system. And ever since then, I have been working in the field of education, but using engineering in very beautiful ways to bring changes in the lives of people in the high Himalayan mountains. Now, we taught children so they could pass exams, but very soon realized that if we only repair broken products, we'd be doing that for decades, and the system would keep producing broken products for us to repair. So the system needs to be changed, and that system which would prevent students from baking in the first place, are the schools in the rural areas, in the villages. And to do that, while on one hand, we set up a prototype of how a school should be by training the teachers, changing the textbooks to make more sense to the people, and organizing the people to take ownership of the school. On the other hand, we had to spread this message among the people so that they want this change in every village. And to do that, we partnered with none other than the so-called failures, who were plenty, 95% as I said. These otherwise helpless young people could become a great force, and I always call them the ants' army. Helpless young failures at that would go into villages with all the fun things that they could do and not any experts or grown-ups or gurus could do. They would go into villages and take their theater, plays, skits, comedy shows, photo exhibitions, music and dance to spread the message of education as a higher priority than rice and kerosene and subsidies and so on. And very soon, people made education as their top priority. And in a democracy, when people make education a top priority, the government makes, and they did. They declared education as the top priority. And together then, things started changing. And in some 5 years, this 5% pass went to 30%, then 40, 50, 60, 75. Slowly, the results started changing in the schools. Now, for those who were still failing, the 25%, we started a very special school because we knew that the system is such that, you capture young people bubbling with energy in classrooms and lecture them and make them scribble notes and take exams. This is not how human beings have ever learned. By nature, by evolution, we have always learnt in practical ways, engaging in real life situations and not sitting in classrooms memorizing things for millions of years. So this system is not made for human beings as we have evolved. And if some people do not do well, it's not their fault. Actually, it's more unusual that some do well in a system like this. Yeah? So we started a school which would do things practically and engage them, and learning through the fingers, through all the senses, things become unforgettable. So we question this notion that education was about 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, which could all definitely be done in a classroom. We redefined education to mean not just 3 R's, but 3 H's. Head, definitely a bright head is important with all your arithmetic and geometry and algebra and science, but skilled hands are equally important in real world to make things happen. So skilled hands, and therefore at this school we started engaging children in doing things and channelizing their energies provided by nature through evolution from times immemorial to do things. And therefore, we started designing the school with the children who were failures, and then running the school through the children themselves. This is one school where the students run the school, and they run it like a little country with a little government which runs for 2 months, and in those 2 months, they take charge of the whole school. Adults really keep distance only to guide them, and that way they learn to be ready for life. Various theories are brought to life by actual application. So if you're learning about germ theory, you would be applying it to make, say, jam, sterilize and preserve fruits for years instead of weeks. And this then makes it so interesting for them that many students take it forward as their career option. So some of these students who come as a failure, remember this school was a very special school. To begin with, the criteria of admission in this school was not your pass percentage, marks and distinctions, but rather that you have failed in the conventional system, right? So these so-called failures, when they learned the practical, engaging ways, they started doing amazing things. So some of them took up the fruit preservation thing to make companies that export fruit pulp and so on to the mainland India. Others who took up, for example, filmmaking became internationally famous filmmakers who are going on receiving awards across countries. Another who had failed 5 times in the 10th grade exams later became a journalist, a well-known journalist, and later joined politics and became the education minister of Ladakh Hill Council. Yeah? So there's nothing wrong with them. And roughly 20 girls from this school of, otherwise you could say failures, went on to represent India in the Indian women's national ice hockey team. So they have been shining. There's nothing wrong. And therefore, we understood that education really should not be about just the head. It has to be more engaging. And now we are working on 2 things. One, an extension of this school so that universities should be more applied. Universities are another place where young people now in their 20s are kept in classrooms, again with textbooks and long lectures. This needs to be brought out in the outdoors so that they can apply the knowledge and make changes in the real world. Secondly, the system needs to change in the rest of the country also, where again, just textbooks and examinations is what education is all about. We need to bring it from this head-oriented system to include hands also. Now, some of the Western schools that are considered better, like IB and so on, are a little better at this hands dimension, but our country needs it even more with all the skills that we keep our children away from. Our country is becoming a country of just heads with very unskilled hands. And therefore, we are hoping to work with different systems so that our system overall in the country becomes more engaging, more practical, more applied. And when things become practical, things become unforgettable also. So rather than blaming children for forgetting their lessons, we need to make the lessons unforgettable. And hands is great. Hands is important, skills of the hands, but that alone will never be enough to make complete human beings. So the third H that we talk about, apart from bright head, skilled hands, is the kind heart. Unless our future citizens have that kind, compassionate heart developed during the school system, we will never be a good effect on this planet nor on other people, fellow beings. So this third H of compassion is what we must also have in our system ingrained. And this is not really new to India. India actually should be leading the world. This is one country that has had Vedas and Vipassana, which is all about developing the heart. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, we got astray and started aping the West, which was all about head and hands to fulfill your desires. Now, desires can be unlimited. You could consume and produce and consume and make a mess of the planet, yet we'll still be an unhappy lot. So, apart from just making businesses out of various concepts, science and so on, we need to groom a future India that is compassionate, that draws inspiration from ancient, age-old philosophies, which teach us not just to plunder nature and use it to satisfy our desires, but that teaches us to conquer some of these desires. One of the things that I learn from our history is what Buddha says, that for human beings, it's a greater achievement to conquer a single desire than to fulfill 1,000. Unless we learn to fulfill our desires, no amount of materials that we may gather will satisfy us, and this will be a chase of shadows which we never can find, and in the process the planet will be destroyed. So therefore, the technology of the external is fine, but the technology of within that India was a master of needs to be rediscovered and spread around. And our education system needs to redefine itself for skills of the hands, definitely, so that people can have various livelihoods which reflects not just examination and degrees, all the 3 hours alone, but also train students within the system itself for real life to start startups, to innovate, which is all missing in our school system. Instead, actually, we are busy killing the curiosity that a child naturally has, the innovative instincts, starting with inquisitiveness, that God or nature gifts every child. Our schools only destroy them. So we'll have to do things to promote these aspects so that every child is able to go out and start things in their lives. Our schools, rather than just having subjects like maths and science, should have, when you test students for admissions and for various jobs, we should be testing them, their track record of creating new ideas, their imagination, their inquisitiveness, their exploring the world and what they have started, not just in material things, but in the domain of the heart, any social responsibilities that they have taken up and shown, that they care for others also. These aspects need to come out. Otherwise, if we just ape the West and become these startup monsters also, we'll be doing more and more of the same things that has made our air unbreathable, water undrinkable, temperatures unbearable. All this is happening because of our blind rush for material wealth and satisfying ourselves with material things alone. And therefore, we're now working on this alternative university, which we hope will show the way, perhaps not just in the mountains of Ladakh, but throughout the world, where universities should have a focus, a context to work in. You cannot, cure all diseases with just one pill. Similarly, education has to be geared and directed towards a diagnosis. So the mountains will not benefit from what we teach around the oceans, and vice versa. So we are working on a university that's for the mountains, mountain worlds that you have in different continents. Young people could come and learn how to be more resourceful and make use of the resources for one's own benefit and that of the others. And secondly, to make it all more engaging so that it doesn't remain just an exercise of the intellect, where we say School of Tourism would not just study tourism from pages of a book, but would rather, run a hotel in the campus itself, or a tourism project, or homestays within the School of Tourism, and learn by doing. And what happens is, when students start doing things and applying their minds, not only do they learn in most unforgettable ways, but also the revenues from this exercise that they have to show successful, the revenues come as a byproduct, but that finances the university, so you don't really need to charge hefty fees from the students. Students could pay, but not in money or rupees, which some have, some don't. Instead, they would be paying with their sweat and imagination, which almost everybody has in equal measures and which actually prepares them for real life. So therefore, we're working to change how we see education so that young people do not have to go through education first and then start thinking of what they want to do. And they have to be retrained by employers at their expense on the job to make mistakes and learn how to do things in life. Instead, our school system itself, whether it is high school or higher secondary or university, should be the playground where they start with applying knowledge to make things happen, whether it is innovative startups that start in schools already. Schools could have various things more than just the subjects that we do in maths and science. They could be, for example, at this school of ours that I just mentioned, the students take care of everything and they grow, for example, vegetables. They take care of the cows. They take care of all the solar gadgets. And when they grow vegetables, they sell it to the kitchen. And when you sell it to the kitchen, you can find out the selling price and you can work backwards and see what went in and find the cost price, and practically therefore learn that profit is equal to selling price minus cost price. You experience it through your being, and they are then likely to do much better as startups and as entrepreneurs in life. While this perhaps will still take some time for the system to change and recognize how to how to fit ingredients like these to prepare our young people for real life, this may take some time. In the meantime, what I feel very strongly, in the meantime, while the system changes, a great way of doing things despite the school system would be to take a gap year from the school system. A year away from the school could be the best thing that you could do about your own education system. So I'm now promoting that we have a system of taking gap year after, say, 12th grade, so that we don't blindly just do one thing after the other and think about why we did it much later in repentful ways. So taking a year after 12th grade would be the best way to understand and explore the world and explore oneself, what one wants, what one can do, what one's aptitude is about, and match it with what is offered in the world, rather than just blindly do things. When in a dark room we lose our keys, sometimes we fumble for the keys without remembering to switch on the light. And if somebody says, why don't you switch on the light? Some people would say, please wait, I don't have time for that. I need to look for my keys. The person could spend the next 1 hour looking for his keys instead of switching on the lights. The gap year is like time taken for switching on the lights so that you can then understand and see what life is about and make decisions. So in all, whether through short-term measures like gap year, which could itself become a field of entrepreneurship for many who could design things that young people can do during a gap year. You could make programs and offer them for young people all around the country. While that can be a short-term measure, we do need to change our system at its roots in the various boards and so on, and we don't really need to wait for a New York or a London to show us the way. We have led the world in many things for so many years, as I said, from Vedas and Vipassana. We need to take up that leadership again and show the world the way young people learn. And I would like that you all here should have the confidence based on our traditional heritage and current capabilities and gear up for leading the world rather than following them blindly. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.